People who've dated a crazy person, what's the craziest thing they've done? I dated this girl for a while, and there were lots of red flags and other crazy things she did, but this one takes the cake. I broke up with her over the phone because she cheated on me and my cousin caught her, and honestly, I was really pissed and hurt. About 15 minutes later, the time it takes to get from her parents' house to mine if you drive 100 miles per hour the whole way, I see her fly into the driveway. I do what any sensible young man would do and lock the doors. Then I tell my mom, I'm not home. So this girl stands in the unheated garage in Michigan in December, banging on the door for no less than an hour. She has no coat, not even a long sleeve shirt. I'm in my room just hoping I don't have to see this crazy girl. She's screaming offers of intimate favors, telling me she can't live without me, saying all manner of things I really didn't want my mother or sisters to hear, but they did. Is it over? No, not even close. My mom, feeling sorry for her, lets this crazy woman in. I'm still in my room, door locked, playing video games and doing my best to ignore the train wreck that's coming. She starts trying to take my door off the hinges. Not wanting to damage my parents' house, I opened the door. We talked. I tried to calm her down, but I was firm that it was over. 2 hours later, she finally left, and I thought, finally, it's over. Exhausted, I went to bed. I woke up the next morning, and there was something between my legs. Above the blankets, you sickos. I reached down to see what it was. Guesses? Anyone? Doesn't matter. You wouldn't have guessed it. It was the head of the buck I'd shot at her dad's house about a month earlier. I'd hung it in a tree so the critters would eat away and I could do an English mount on it, mounting the skull to a piece of wood for decoration. She climbed a tree after midnight, took it down, frozen solid and, fortunately, not rotting, drove back to my house, broke in, snuck into my bedroom, and placed it in my bed. Holy crap, that is insane. And that's still not the end. She then stole and hid things of mine around the house. I called her, told her she was completely messed up in the head, and that if she ever came near me again, I'd call the police. She told me she'd tell me where my stuff was if I still slept with her. I hung up. I found my things. My toothbrush was wet, and since I hadn't brushed my teeth, I threw it out. Good thing. I later found out she had put it in the toilet. I was left with a pit in my stomach. One overwhelming thought raced through my mind. What if I had gotten her pregnant? Kiddos, always cover your stump before you hump, and never stick your dong in crazy. Story 2. I dated this girl once who was insanely hot. Guys were checking me out like, how's he doing with that chick? One dude even gave me a high five at a bar with the full Jeremiah Johnson nod of approval. She was great at first. The crazy usually doesn't show up right away. But not too long in, I started noticing something was off. Mood swings and other weird behavior made me decide it was time to move on. After a few months, I let her know I thought it was best not to see each other anymore after she got an attitude about something. She laughed at first, walked out, and gave me the look like, I'll be the hottest girl you ever date again. I thought that was the end of it. After about a week, I got a several-minute-long voicemail that was apologetic. I felt sorry for her and called back to say it just wasn't going to work, but that I didn't have any bad feelings toward her. That was probably the worst mistake I ever made. She immediately went off on a tirade about how no one had ever broken up with her, blah, blah, blah. I eventually hung up and started avoiding her. That kicked off, and I am not exaggerating, a 3-year stalking episode that included hundreds upon hundreds of phone calls, emails, texts, and messages, swinging back and forth between really sad to flat-out crazy mad. These were not normal messages either. There would be several voicemails back to back, each 2 to 3 minutes long, several times a day, from a bunch of different numbers. The text messages were novels. My friends were in awe because none of us had ever seen anything like it, especially from a woman who would never have had any trouble finding someone to date. She even showed up at my house randomly late one night, about 2 years after the last time I had communicated with her. Thankfully, I didn't answer the door. The next day, I found a crumpled note in my yard, which is how I knew it had been her. It honestly got to the point where I was afraid it was going to turn into a fatal attraction situation, and I realized I needed to file a restraining order. Even now, my heart still sinks a little whenever the doorbell rings unexpectedly. Story 3. She tried to kill me. I've told this story here before, but my ex-fiancée Teresa was genuinely unwell. The straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, was when she told me she regularly talked to her dog, and, of course, that he talked back to her. She and the dog were convinced that aliens were sending signals or messages to people all over the planet specifically to mess with her life. I broke up with her almost immediately after that. Even though I really loved her, I was young and knew I was in no way capable of handling someone with such severe mental health issues. The day after we broke up, she took 3 out of 4 lug nuts off one of my tires and left the last one on, nice and tight. The idea was that as I was driving, the pressure would snap the last one and the wheel would come off, ideally while I was on the highway. I did drive the car all the way to work, including about 10 miles on the highway. I was too young and too clueless about cars to understand that the wobble I was feeling was very bad news and that I should have pulled over immediately. I honestly got lucky that the wheel didn't come off while I was driving. My dad called me at work and said, "Hey, you might want to check your car. There are 3 lug nuts sitting on the ground where your car was parked this morning." I called the police, but they didn't seem to care much, since nothing had actually happened in their eyes. They weren't even interested in having me file for a restraining order and brushed it off as just a teenage lover's spat. I had one other run-in with her later on, but it's been over 25 years since I've had to deal with that level of crazy. Story 4. We met online in a chat room. It was fairly normal back in the early 2000s. She lived in another country but came home during each holiday. I was in my early 20s, and she was a couple of years older, already divorced. She said her ex-husband was a jerk, that he left her, and that she was looking for someone to settle down with. She had a well-paid job, was really good-looking, and took great care of herself. Skin treatments, expensive makeup and products, perfumes, clothes, lingerie, you name it. For a poor guy like me, it felt like a dream come true. Being in my prime, we banged everywhere and every time possible. But things quickly shifted when she went back to her country. She started saying she loved me and began calling me 10, 20, sometimes 30 times a day just to say it and wait to hear it back. She kept promising me a better life with her in her country if I became her husband. I didn't feel the same at the time, so I couldn't say those words back. I also didn't want to break things off because I hoped I might eventually feel that way, but I didn't want to lie until then. There was something off about her that I couldn't shake. Eventually, she started calling me drunk in the evenings and talking about hurting herself if I left her. Being young and inexperienced with crazy, I was lured into these long phone calls with her night after night. Then one day, she called me already well drunk and said, "This is it. We're finished. You don't care about me." And that she was going to end it all then and there. I heard her phone drop on the floor and then there was no sound. For a couple of minutes, I was freaking out. I kept calling her name, calling her back, but she didn't answer. I was shitting bricks. Then I remembered she had texted and called me a few times from her sister's number. They lived close to each other, and I had that number saved just in case. So I called her sister immediately. It was around 2:30 in the morning. I told her that her sister had just attempted to harm herself and that she needed to get to her place as soon as possible. 3 hours later, she calls me, all smug, sounding like she woke up with the worst hangover. "Why? Did you have to call my sister? You screwed this up for me." I don't know the details of that night. I just got a call from her sister the next day saying she was okay. She hadn't attempted anything. We basically broke contact after that. Fast forward a few months, I remembered she still had some very dear photos of mine. Back then, there were no digital cameras, so whoever had the photos or negatives basically had the only copy. I asked her how she was and if she would be willing to send me the photos. All smug, she said, "My new husband would not like that." That's when I lost it. I pulled the crazy card and said all sorts of wild things over the phone for giving me the scare of a lifetime. Up until that moment, at least. 2 weeks later, I received the photos in the mail. We haven't spoken since. Story 5. Not me, my 18-year-old roommate. It was a university share house with 5 of us living there, and I was the old man of the place at the whopping age of 21, a grad student. The others were all 18-year-old freshmen. One female roommate, the girlfriend of one of the guys, was 17 when she moved in. Their relationship ended after she had a 3 score with her friend and his friend in the share house. They then had to live together for another 5 months after the breakup. Oof. One of the other guys started hooking up with a girl who I could instantly smell the crazy on. She looked like a meth head who hadn't discovered meth yet. I kept my mouth shut and let them have their fun. I did make a few cautious comments to him when I witnessed some seriously weird behavior from her. She would show up at his workplace, a nightclub, all the time, essentially spying on him or starting drama there. I was like, dude. Anyway, as predicted, it was a disaster. They fought constantly, breaking up and making up every 2 to 3 days. At some point, she stole his keys and secretly made a copy. One day, I came home and found her in the house alone, even though I knew they weren't currently together, because she had hit him in the head with a potted plant 2 days earlier. I told her to give me the keys. She refused, of course, and went completely unhinged. I called my roommate. He came home. There was more arguing, and eventually he managed to get the keys back. After yet another huge fight, she finally left. The next morning, he woke up with her in his bed. She had broken into his room through the window and tucked herself into his bed while he was sleeping. What made it even more impressive and disturbing was that his bedroom was on the second floor. We had stolen a load of milk crates, zip-tied them together, thrown some crappy cushions on top, and made a ghetto couch outside. She spent the night silently cutting all the zip ties and then restacking the crates into a frigging staircase up to his bedroom window. That was something to behold. The guy completely freaked out. He got in his car and tried to leave. This was his go-to move about 90% of the time. He would just take off and leave the rest of us, usually me, to deal with getting this crazy woman to leave and making sure she didn't destroy his stuff in the process. She ran out after him, half-dressed, and jumped in front of his car to stop him from leaving, in the middle of the extremely busy road we lived on. Cars were backing up, honking, and trying to get around them. He was trying to maneuver around her, backing up and inching forward, but he was stuck while she screamed and banged on his hood. I was standing on the lawn, just amazed at the situation unfolding in front of me. He looked over at me through his window with the most desperate eyes and mouthed, "Please." Reluctantly, I went into the street, grabbed her from behind, lifted her up while she kicked and screamed, and carried her out of the road. As soon as she was clear, my roommate sped off and traffic started moving again. Lucky for me, she was tiny and thin enough that I could move her. Anyway, he learned a very important lesson about sticking his dong in crazy at 18. Story 6. I was working at a small company in a department with 2 other mid-20s single guys. In another department, a girl was hired who I had gone to high school with. I got a text from her with the usual, "Long time no see. How crazy is it that we're working at the same company" type of stuff, so we started talking a bit. After a couple of days, she asked if I was busy on Saturday and if I'd like it if she came over. No problem at all. We ended up sleeping together repeatedly, and she left on Sunday. I hung out with her again the next weekend, but we actually talked and I got serious crazy vibes. So that was the end of that. About 2 months later, I get pulled into the owner of the business's office with my 2 coworkers. He is furious, says he has 911 dialed, and that if he doubts 1 ounce of what we have to say, we're going to jail. Apparently, the same girl had also slept with the other 2 guys and wasn't performing well at work. The boss went to fire her, and she claimed it was because she was distraught, saying that my coworkers and I had essayed her. We all pulled out our phones and showed that we had talked with her at different times, that she had initiated everything with each of us, and clearly showed her intent through numerous explicit messages and pictures. The owner calmed down, apologized, and called her in. She comes in, and he says, "You're fired." She starts shrieking that we essayed her and spouting general woe is me nonsense. 911 ends up being called, and she gets taken away in a cop car. Never stick your dong in crazy and don't crap where you eat, even if they don't directly eat with you. Story 7. This post hit home. This is one of 2 next-level super crazy women I've encountered in my 43 years of life. Honestly surprised I'm still alive. I met this seemingly cool lawyer chick in NOLA. Cute spot. We never hooked up, but we stayed friends on social media for over a year. I made the mistake of sending her flowers on her birthday, probably after some weird breakup she'd had. Suddenly, she's coming to DC to see me. When she visits, we end up doing it in her friend's bed after the friend passes out from drinking. I'm thinking, this is wild, but whatever. I'm lit. A few days later, she tells me her friend was talking about me, wanted me, and was acting weird. Crazy sign number 1. I let it pass. Then she gets laid off and eventually lands a job in Miami. She asked me to help her move, fly down to NOLA and ride with her to Miami. I'm thinking, okay, this might be fun. We could be smashing the whole road trip. Long story, I've done that before. However, she starts acting really funky over texts, sending a flood of messages in a row. Crazy sign number 2. Stuff like, hey, how you doing? Minutes later, I guess you're busy. Minutes later, here's what's happening with me. And so on. I come out of a meeting and have to scroll like crazy just to follow her, though really she's just talking to herself. Somehow, she ends up tripping because she thinks I'm not coming. I'm like, screw it. I'm not coming because she's being crazy. I bail, send her a copy of the canceled Southwest tickets, and she's all apologetic. Side note, love Southwest. I can get that credit back for another flight. Fast forward about a week. She ends up road tripping with a friend. She tells me she really wants me to come to Miami and that she'll make it up to me. Ironically, well, really coincidentally, I had to go to Miami for work. I tell her I'm coming for work and she's like, stay with me. My dumbass agrees because, honestly, the banging her that one time was bomb. I get there and she's acting super weird. We do some light shopping together because she wants to dress me. Later that evening, she flips out, kicks me out of the bedroom, calls me selfish, and says some other crazy things. Crazy sign number 3. I'm heated, laying on the couch thinking, this woman is crazy. Also, the place we're staying is a temporary Airbnb because her actual apartment complex isn't ready yet. She didn't let me know until I arrived that she'd need my help moving again. The next day, I handle work stuff and take my things with me because I'm not sure I can trust leaving them there. She could lock me out. I secretly grab a hotel room and store my stuff there. I fake it, saying the work company put me up and that it's just easier to leave my things there so they won't get in the way of the move. Total BS. She starts acting normal again, and we end up doing it on the balcony. She's mad wild, and the banging is insane. All of a sudden, she pauses and pins me down like in that crazy movie, Can't Remember the Name, where the chick slashes Dougie Hauser's throat after doing it. She has this insane look in her eyes, stares at me seriously, and says, tell me what you think of me. Crazy sign number 4. I think if I answer this wrong, I'm screwed. I pause, gather my composure, and say, I feel very connected to you, and I'm scared. Lamau, it wasn't a lie. I was connected to her and scared as hell. She apparently loved the answer, and we keep going. Then she stops me again. Don't you want to know how I feel about you? I think, I don't want to hear this. She says, I'm falling in love with you. Crap. I continue banging because I don't want to respond. Thank goodness she used that bachelor-style falling in love BS instead of saying I love you, because you can play it off with a kiss. Actual I love yous require a real response. Now we go grab dinner outside and she starts talking about being on some kind of personality meds or something, crazy pills. Crazy sign number 5, craziness confirmed. She even has the audacity to say she thinks I'm narcissistic and need meds. I'm thinking, where is this going? I mean, yeah, I can feel myself sometimes, but I've got my own damn insecurities. Anyway, we finish dinner, and I tell her I have to stay at the hotel to get some work done. It's easier that way. The next day, she texts me. I don't think this is going to work out. I just thank the stars that I'm alive and that she opted out. She's the type of chick who would probably kill someone and has likely never been told no by a guy. I think it freaked her out that I didn't do whatever she wanted. Story 8. We never slept together and never went further than a simple 2-second hug. I'd been friends with her for over 2 years. One night, we were at my place playing cards and having a few drinks. While I was talking casually with other people at the table, she talked over me. I asked her to hold on and let me finish my conversation. She went quiet, then leaned over and whispered, "You need to apologize." I gave her a perplexed look and shook my head to indicate, no. She went silent again, then whispered the same thing, this time adding that I had been rude and disrespectful. I told her the only disrespect I saw was her talking over me in the first place, and that if anyone was owed an apology, it was me. That was a big mistake. She went quiet again for about 20 seconds. Then, out of nowhere, she hit me twice on the side of the head. She trained in Muay Thai. I was stunned, thinking, what the hell just happened? She then came at me with boxing punches, which I had to dodge. She got angrier, threw my glass of beer in my face, and then started grabbing anything on the table to attack me. She got hold of a bottle of Jack Daniels and looked ready to crack my skull with it. I must have gone into autopilot. I grabbed her wrists and pinned her against the wall, while she squirmed, still trying to get at my head with the bottle. I said I was sorry. I could feel all the anger and strength drain out of her. She looked at me and said, "Okay," then went upstairs to use the bathroom. Everyone at the table was in shock and disbelief. She came back down and acted as if nothing had happened. Needless to say, we are no longer friends. Choose your friends wisely, folks. Story 9. Met a gal on Tinder. Both of our profiles said we were seeking casual dating. She was super hot and very into me, which in hindsight should have been my first warning, and we went on 3 dates. On the day of our last date, I stopped at the pet store to buy my dog a couple of antler chews. There were 3 left, so I picked the 2 biggest ones. My dog is big, and headed to the register. The clerk noticed there was only 1 antler left in the bin, a really small one, and offered to throw it in for free. It was too small for my dog. She'd choke on it. But the gal I was seeing had a small dog, so I figured I'd give it to her. I arrived at her place and gave her the antler, for her dog, explaining that I got it for free, that it was too small for my dog and that I'd thought of her pup. She stared at me for a moment, then started crying. Between sobs, I gathered that no one had ever been this nice to her, and that her ex used to hate the dog. She was completely overwhelmed by what she saw as my thoughtfulness, and gave me a look of adoration I had never seen before. It was like a switch flipped. The entire dynamic changed. She started texting me all day, calling me every night, and about 2 days later, she told me she was falling for me and wanted us to move in together. It had been approximately 2 weeks. It's a longer story, but I broke things off. She handled it poorly, and 2 weeks later, she tracked down an ex-girlfriend of mine. Together, they put out a series of tweets about how they were going to tag team murder me. So that's how I went from a casual hookup to her soulmate to having my life threatened in less than a month. And all because of a little bone. Story 10. I was seeing this guy long distance a few years ago. Things were fine at first, and I thought he was actually a great guy. Then, after about 1.5 years of seeing each other, I caught him cheating on me. Naturally, I reacted like most people would and broke up with him. I didn't hear from him for about a week, and then all of a sudden I started getting threatening texts and phone calls from him. He even went so far as to send me pictures of himself with the woman he cheated with. I tried ignoring him and blocking all his accounts, but every time I blocked a number, he would use a friend's phone to contact me again. Eventually, I reached a breaking point and called the police. Shortly after that, I never heard from him again. I'd like to say everything was great after that, but the whole situation left me pretty scarred, and I haven't bothered trying to be in a relationship since. It's been about 3.5 years. Story 11. We dated for, 7 to 8 years. I was ready to move on. The relationship had gone stale. When I told her I would be vacating our apartment when the lease was up in a few months, she was like, "Oh, I'm coming with you." No, you're not. We are not continuing this relationship. That went on for a few months while I looked for a house. When I finally found one and got my bid accepted, she said, "Oh, good. I should come see your new house." No, crazy. You are not. It got worse once she realized she wasn't going to live with me. I had just come back from a trip, exhausted and not in the mood for anyone, when a knock at my door woke me up. I opened it, and there she was, crying her eyes out, saying someone had essayed her, and she just needed to talk. Dumbly, I let her in. She started talking about feeling dirty and used, and the next thing I knew, she was giving me a blowy, saying she felt better now. After that, it escalated, posting personal conversations on Facebook, emailing my bosses, calling the cops, threatening me directly, having her son threaten me, more cops, restraining orders, and so on. She was insane to the nth degree. A girl I dated for a few months ago started showing some signs of that level of crazy, and I noped the hell right out of that situation. At least now, I know when the crazy buzzer starts humming, it's time to drop the dynamite and run. Story 12. My lease on my apartment was up, so I moved into her house. About 3 years in, I added her as an authorized user on my credit cards. She never used them, or so I thought. It was meant to be an emergency thing since I made much more than she did. Eventually, we decided to fix up the house, rent it out, and buy a bigger one. We took out a second mortgage on her house, using it as collateral along with my income and credit. We put about $15,000 into renovations, new floors, a new bathroom, all sorts of improvements. A month later, I came home to, I don't want to do this anymore. It's just something I've been thinking about. Then, while I was in the middle of a breakdown, the credit card companies started calling. She had run up $40,000 on my credit cards without me knowing. They had been at zero for a long time, so I hadn't even been checking the accounts until I started getting calls about missed payments. She wasn't a co-signer, just an authorized user, so I was legally responsible for everything. So here I was, $55,000 in debt. I couldn't afford my own place, so I ended up living in a crappy house with a friend I could barely stand. My credit score dropped from 797 to 601. I tried every legal route I could, but I was basically stuck. I've accepted it and can laugh about it now, but she set me back for a long time and did some serious damage to my mental health. Story 13. So, my time to shine. I worked with this chick a while back. Cute as hell. Everybody liked her. I never really thought much of it, co-workers and all that. Anyways, we became decent friends and she eventually became my boss. One day she smacked my buns. She had done it before, but this time she really gave it a good whack. About an hour later, I said, "Skew it," and whack, gave her right back. Then I left to go on a parts run. 3 minutes later, I got a text. That spanking made me wet as hell. Really? That was all it took? I said, "LOL, sorry," and she replied, "No, you gotta fix this." Okay. So we made plans for her to come by. Here's where I need to give backstory. She was married to a dude doing 25 to life for something. I never cared to know what. She had been abused as a kid by her stepfather and was just a total wreck because the men in her life treated her like crap. So she comes by and I'm nervous as hell. You don't sleep with your boss unless you're in the movies, right? Wrong. Anyway, she's happy, I'm happy. Let's do some NSA fun, right? Wrong. About a week later, she says she's falling for me. She'd never had a guy care if she finished, let alone all the normal nice things I had always done. I said, "But NSA?" She said, "I need to know you at least care." Well, of course I care. You can see where this is going. We decide to date, but we have to keep it secret from everyone at work. It's great for maybe 3 weeks. She likes the stuff I do, all that. She said she was really falling for me and asked what I thought about marriage and if it bothered me that she's still legally married. I said, "Well, yeah, but I don't know how you feel about wanting to leave him while he's in prison. I don't know if we really have a future." So, cue the crazy. I was living with my friends and their kids. Great people, basically extended family. One night we're drinking, playing video games and board games, just chilling. She's wasted, and did I mention she was on antipsychotics? So I'm guessing the booze and the meds mixed together into the perfect storm. She starts going on about how adorable their newborn is, how it'd be great to have kids, how they should let her and me borrow their newborn baby so she can see how good a dad I'll be. Oh no, oh no, no, no. They go upstairs. She and I are sitting on the couch. I say, "That was a bit crazy, huh?" "No." "Okay, but yes, it was. You can't borrow a baby." She excuses herself to the bathroom. I'm sitting there and I hear her sobbing, so I go in there. She's covered in puke, rocking back and forth, clutching her knees. She looks up at me and tells me I'm the worst piece of crap in the world, worse than the stepdad who essayed her, and her husband who habitually beat the hell out of her. I said, "I'm sorry you feel that way. Maybe you should take a cab home and we'll talk tomorrow." That's when the crazy goes over 9,000. She gets up, punches me in the face, grabs a knife, and says she'll use it on herself right now. I talk her down and get her into bed. As she's drifting off, she says, "I want that damn baby." So I sat up all night hoping she wouldn't try to steal my friend's kid. She didn't, but holy hell, I thought she might. She got up that morning, said we were done, and left. Cool. Sorry you think I'm such an awful person, but bye. Best one I've ever had. Story 14. I was seeing this girl, and slowly the red flags started to emerge. Month 2 into our relationship, she lied about having a husband, saying she was getting separated when I found out. Fine. Month 4. She lied about not having kids. She actually had 2, and they were coming to live with her after previously staying at her soon-to-be ex-husband's place in New Jersey. Fine. Month 7. She lied about her age by a decade. She said she was 35. She was actually 45. I wanted kids. She was playing along and actually couldn't have them. Not really fine, but I really liked her. She makes $500,000 a year, and the physical intimacy is amazing. Month 11. Lied about actually getting separated from her husband. Turns out they're staying together for the kids, and according to her, he was out of state wrapping up business. This isn't fine at all. I need to start mentally checking out and walk away from this deceitful multimillionaire. Month 12. Lied about her husband still being in another state. He had actually moved back and, according to her, was in the process of closing on a big house for their family. Okay, there is no future here. I'm calling it quits next week. Month 12. The following week. One final bang, and I'm breaking up with her. Lied about closing on a big house. It was actually a 3-bedroom unit on the floor above where she was currently staying. Her husband was upstairs with her kids looking at the new place. I'm in mortal danger. I jumped out of bed and ran to my car with my shirt unbuttoned. To this day, she finds me on Tinder or Bumble, calls me a beautiful man, and occasionally sends me pictures from her millionaire lifestyle, along with messages calling me poor. Story 15. I started dating this girl. She was cute, sweet, vulnerable, a little crazy, but I didn't mind. I let her stay at my place for a while because she had been evicted from hers. She told me she was on the pill. Very long story short, but there it is. I found out she was pregnant with our child the same day she told me she had been hiding a serious drug addiction, which meant she had lied about almost every single detail of her life. She completely went off the rails and refused to get help. Cue a wild, emotional roller coaster ride from hell. Wildly, emotionally abusive. After our child was born, she would go out with friends multiple nights a week and stay out all night long partying. I caught her cheating, took her back. She refused to work or do anything. I'd come home from work to a messy apartment, nothing to eat, and be handed a baby in dirty diapers on her way out the door. I stuck with her because of the baby. Basically, I took 2 years off my life trying to fix the relationship. She convinced her parents to sign over a house they owned to her, which was 50 miles from where I had been living when we met, but close to her family. I didn't agree with it, but everyone involved put so much pressure on me that I caved. 3 months after we moved in, she kicked me out right after Christmas. It took me almost 2 years to get back on my feet. The one bright spot was that I was able to have an awesome relationship with my child since she wanted so much me time. I became a dedicated single dad. I went back to school, worked, and attended classes around the clock for years, eventually changing careers. She continued her downward spiral and has never gotten better. There were some very dark times for all of us. Lots of suffering, hard work, and expense, but I ended up getting custody of our child. I met the love of my life, and we've been married for around a decade. Things are really good now, and we have a wonderful family together. This story glosses over a lot, but I don't want to post anything that could identify us. It's been a long, long road. Story 16. I want to make this abundantly clear. I did not sleep with this chick. Here's why. I was at a small house party, a get-together with some good friends. My good friend's wife brought along her friend from high school. She seemed cool, relaxed, kind of a stoner-type attitude. We went out to dinner with no problems and afterwards started playing a drinking game at the house. She had one mixed drink. I watched it get made. It maybe had a shot and a half in it. We finished the game and were sitting outside just drinking and hanging out. She drank one beer. 15 minutes go by and she is the most belligerent drunken psycho I've ever seen. At first it was kind of funny. We thought she was joking. How can someone, even the smallest of people, get that drunk off 2 drinks? But no. She puked on the kitchen floor and my friend's wife dragged her to the bathroom. 45 minutes of listening to crying and screaming go by, and I decide to step in. My friend and his wife were trying to get this girl in the bathtub, and the floor was covered in about ½ an inch of vomit. They see me come in and beg me to help, so I pick her up and put her in the tub to rinse off some of the puke. At first, she tried to drown herself in the tub. After holding her head out of the water, she fights it like the water is boiling hot. After a couple of minutes, she's fine and comfortable enough to then take off all her clothes. At this point, my friend's wife had left, and we were frantically screaming for her to help. Her best advice was to tell us to put clothes on her. This chick turns into the Tasmanian devil and starts screaming that we are raping her. Fast forward 30 more minutes of what feels like wrestling a bull, and we are carrying her up the stairs into bed. More puke, some lullabies, and she's out cold. 10 out of 10 would not sleep with her. I stole the rest of her cigarettes and left the party to take a long shower. Story 17. I'm not gonna lie, she was fun as hell, especially in bed. This girl was down for anything. We had agreed on no relationship, just bang buddies. We worked together, and she lived a block away from me. Whenever she'd page me, I'd go over, and we'd do it. Her roommate said she would swear it was the night I'd sleep over. But it was summer, and she didn't have AC. She'd fall asleep about 10 minutes after we finished, and I'd come downstairs while her roommates laughed. She slowly started getting more and more jealous. She'd start fights with me for no reason, swearing I wanted to sleep with some random girl at work or while we were out. She would dance with other guys to try to make me jealous, then have them come over and tell me how lucky I was to have such a hot girl who was so into me, and that I was stupid if I didn't lock her down. I'd usually respond, "If you like her so much, take her." The guy would try, and she'd tell him to go away. It was like a funny game for a while. Eventually, though, it got old, and I cut her loose. She immediately started dating another guy from work and got into one of her rages, locking him in her house for 3 hours, while throwing things like pots and lamps just trying to hit him. When I asked her why she never tried that with me, her reply was, "I never actually thought you'd hit me, but I was never 100% sure." LMAO. After that, we had one more random booty call. She called me and asked me to come over. We didn't even go into her room. We just did it on the coffee table and ended it with ATM. I do miss her sometimes. Story 18. She thought I was still talking to my ex because she went through my phone while I was showering and saw my ex's number. She started sending death threat texts to my ex, which I was able to stop. Then one night, I was at the bar with some buddies. She called me, but the bar was loud, so I didn't hear my phone. Suddenly, my buddy, who was also my roommate, gets a call from our other roommate telling him we needed to get home immediately because she was tearing up the place. We got home to find she'd gone through my room, smashed a 3-foot bong on our front porch, slashed my bed with a hatchet, and burned all the letters I'd saved from family, friends, and yes, my ex, from when I was in boot camp. I told her to leave, not very nicely. She apologized and begged me to get in her car, which was parked a ways down the street so we could talk. I told her I wasn't talking and started walking back to the house. She floored it past me and ran head-on into my car parked in front of our house, flipping her car upside down and totaling my car. Story 19. I met this girl at a party. We started chatting and flirting a little. Eventually, things progressed to the point where we were making out in the bathroom. I got her number and went home. The next day, I woke up to texts from a few friends asking about the night. I found out from them that she had a boyfriend of almost 5 years. Oops. Later that day, I got a text from her. "Hey, I'm single now." We started chatting a bit, and I told her directly that I wasn't looking for anything serious, just a hookup. She agreed, and I thought things were clear, so we hooked up. Fast forward a week, she was calling me 3 to 4 times a day, constantly trying to hang out and generally being clingy. We had only hooked up once at this point. I didn't answer any of her calls, so she started dialing Cocker 67 before her number, or whatever the code is that blocks caller ID. I was getting 8 calls a night, about 5 to 10 minutes apart. The first 3 or 4 calls showed her number, and the rest all appeared as unavailable. This continued for about a week with me not answering a single call. Finally, I have a different girl over. Things start getting hot and steamy, and then suddenly my phone starts ringing. I ignore it. It rings again. I ignore it. On the 3rd ring, the other girl asks why my phone keeps ringing. I give her the cliff notes of the situation, and then it rings again. The other girl says, "I got this," and picks up the phone. "Hello? He's a little busy right now." No more calls from the crazy girl. Story 20. I dated a girl for a month or 2 while I was in the US and then had to head home. We decided to try maintaining a long-distance relationship, and she said she would come visit. Everything seemed all right until I got back home. Things went downhill fairly quickly. She lied about being able to visit. She had a felony, not just a DUI, but something like accessory to grand larceny. She couldn't travel to Canada, let alone other countries. And since travel is a big part of my life, I decided to end things there. About 6 months later, I was back in the US. She had apparently been talking to several of my friends before my arrival, claiming we were going to get back together. This was far from the truth. Because of overlapping social circles, we ended up at the same event, a gathering in the desert, and things got tense. We had a long talk about how we would not be getting back together. I was not impressed, as she literally chased me around the event when the conversation didn't go her way. Towards the end of the event, I had been drinking, and after dinner, I got violently ill. It was uncharacteristic. Nobody else in our group got sick, and I hadn't drunk much that day, just a few beers. I lost consciousness while vomiting into an orange Home Depot bucket. Looking back and piecing things together, I am 99.9% sure someone, her, put GHB in my drink. When I came to several hours later, I was in my tent, and she was in my cot with me. I started freaking out, demanding that she leave. I remember screaming for her to go, saying I wanted nothing to do with her, but I was still under the influence of whatever had been slipped into my drink and could do little other than yell and pass out again. Things got even stranger when she started asking all these very detailed questions about one of my exes, whom she had befriended after we broke up. I had a small space to create some artwork at a local maker warehouse in the city, and when we were dating, and due to me not being in the US most of the year, I had let her use the space. After returning from the event, I asked her to vacate the space. A massive argument ensued, during which she threatened to set all of my belongings on fire while still in the warehouse. Story 21. The girl stole my car keys. It started with us making out in the back of my car. I was completely entranced by her beauty. See the hot, crazy graph. My downtown area started hurting, and I couldn't tell what was happening there. Did she like being aggressive? Were my clothes tugging me somewhere? Were we just in an awkward position where her fist happened to be digging into my muscles? I wasn't sober, and I just thought it was the price to pay for having a goddess do what she was doing. I somehow realized the car keys weren't in my pocket anymore. Adrenaline and cortisol shot through me, snapping me out of the trance. She had been aggressively being close to me to distract me, while her other hand quietly slipped into my pocket and stole the keys. And she had succeeded. I pushed her aside and told her we had to stop. She acted confused. I pretended to look for the keys, and she acted as if she was searching too. Then she moved her hand somewhere. The keys dropped from her hand, and she picked them up, saying, "Here they are." We left the car, and that was that. Edit. She also drugged her family so she could leave home at night. She tried to convince a friend of mine to cheat on his girlfriend with her. She's an addict. She stole a jug of milk, a box of gum, and a bottle of alcohol from a gas station in front of my group of friends. Despite all of this happening before the story above, I still fell for her looks. Story 22. She faked a pregnancy but had been planning that serious talk before I told her I needed to stop dating her. So she was preparing to lie before she even knew I wanted to end things. She started sending me messages from fake Facebook profiles of so-called friends and photos from Google image searches of positive EPT pregnancy tests. There was even an email sent to me from her doctor, complete with spelling mistakes from a Gmail address. I racked up a $1,000 phone bill in spring 2009, back when there were no unlimited minutes, freaking out and seeking advice before she started sending the photos. At that point, I finally thought rationally and realized it was all BS. This happened right before I was supposed to go back to university for my freshman year, to start my life and build a future. I was 24 at the time. Now, I'm a 34-year-old college graduate with a career and a year post-vasectomy. Life is good. Story 23. The first one was a girlfriend of mine for about a year and a half. Early on, I found out she was cheating on me and tried to break up with her, but she would threaten self-harm, call me hundreds of times, and make new accounts every time I blocked her. I never really managed to get away from her until much later. It was hard, but eventually I got free. I thought I loved her, which made me stay at times. But I've since realized I was just lonely and liked not being alone. She still talks crap about me to this day because that's just what she does. She's a horrible and unlovable person deep down, so she plays for sympathy by telling her new male friends what her exes have done to her. That's how I got roped in. Felt bad for her. And yeah, here we are today. The second time, I didn't stick my dong in it, but I did go down on her. We were both a bit drunk, but nothing excessive, maybe 3 or 4 vodka and cokes each. I went down on her. She offered the same to me, and I said no. I thought she might like me enough to date me if I showed I cared about her, not me. Blah, blah, boring stuff. Then, a few weeks later, the police showed up, and I had a SA charge against me. Luckily, it's now cleared, and I'm just trying to live my life. Since then, I haven't really done anything with anyone else. I've been enjoying my time alone playing Destiny 2, but it really messed me up for a good few years of my life. Something I'm only just now getting over. To anyone possibly reading this, stay well the F away from crazy. One nut may seem worth it, but it's not. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.